The clerk looked at my social security number and said I was dead. Not missing. Not fake. Dead. A child who died in 1991. I was standing right there, 32 years old, holding $12 and an eviction notice, trying to get a passport for a janitor job. And this woman was telling me I didn't exist. The silent alarm started flashing. Red lights spinning on the wall. 2 armed guards moved forward, hands on their guns. My brain couldn't process what was happening. Then the elevator doors opened. A man in an expensive black suit walked out like he owned the building. He moved past the guards like they weren't even there. But he wasn't looking at them. He was looking straight at me with an expression that made my blood run cold. It was recognition. He stopped 2 feet away and said 3 words that erased my entire life. Welcome back, Morgan. Morgan. That wasn't my name. My name was Lucy. I'd been Lucy for 32 years. I was the unwanted stepdaughter of a small-town sheriff. I was the mistake, the burden, the girl who scrubbed floors and dodged eviction notices. But this man was looking at me like he knew something I didn't. I didn't end up in handcuffs. I didn't get thrown in a holding cell. Instead, this man, Mr. Holbrook, he said his name was, led me into a quiet office that smelled like expensive coffee and leather. He poured me a glass of ice water and set it down gently. Drink, he said. You're in shock. My hands were shaking so hard the ice rattled against the glass. I'd spent 14 years believing I was nothing. The girl nobody wanted. The stepdaughter who slept on a cot in the laundry room while my stepsister got the master suite. Holbrook slid a file folder across the desk. He didn't open it right away. He just looked at me with this expression I couldn't read. We've been looking for you for 3 decades, Morgan, he said quietly. Then he opened the folder. Inside was a photo. Not a mugshot. An age progression image of a young woman. She had my eyes. My jawline. My exact nose. But she didn't look tired. She didn't look beaten down. She looked loved. That's what you would have looked like, Holbrook said, if you hadn't been taken. I couldn't breathe. Your name is Morgan Westbrook. Your family made their fortune in Texas oil, but they would trade every single well they owned just to see your face again. You were kidnapped from a park in 1991. The room started spinning. I gripped the arms of the chair to keep myself steady. Kidnapped. The word should have terrified me. But instead, it felt like a key turning in a lock I'd been picking at my whole life. Suddenly, everything made sense. I thought about Clayton. The man I called my stepfather. The sheriff who told me I was trash. Who made me sleep in the laundry room. Who looked at me like I was something he scraped off his shoe. I thought he hated me because I was difficult. Because I was unlovable. But he didn't hate me because I was a bad kid. He hated me because I was a crime scene. The tears came fast and hot. But I wasn't crying from fear. I was crying from relief. Pure, overwhelming relief. I wasn't broken. I wasn't a burden. I was stolen. Someone had tried to throw me away, but I was worth something. I'd always been worth something. Holbrook pushed a phone across the desk. Your parents, your real parents, are on a private jet. They're landing at the executive airport in 20 minutes. You're safe here, Morgan. This is federal territory. No one can touch you. I stared at that phone like it was a lifeline. For the first time in my life, the ground under my feet felt solid. I wasn't the girl with the eviction notice anymore. I was Morgan Westbrook. And I was going home. I reached for the phone, ready to make the call that would end the nightmare. I finally let my guard down. I finally let myself believe the fight was over. That was my mistake. The door exploded inward. 2 deputies stormed in, hands on their weapons, boots slamming against the floor. And behind them, walking in like he owned the place, was Clayton. He wasn't in his usual stained flannel. He was in full sheriff's dress uniform, the star on his chest gleaming under the lights. He didn't look at Holbrook. He looked straight at me. His eyes were dead. Step away from the suspect, he barked. Holbrook stood up fast, putting himself between me and the deputies. "This is a federal investigation, Sheriff. You have no jurisdiction here." Clayton didn't even blink. He slapped a folded piece of paper on the desk. "I have a warrant signed by a county judge 10 minutes ago. Grand larceny. Felony charges." He pointed at me with that same finger that had poked my chest 1,000 times growing up. "That woman stole $50,000 worth of diamond jewelry from my wife's bedroom before she fled this morning. I'm taking her into custody." "That's a lie!" I screamed. The shock broke through. "I haven't been to your house in years." "Save it for the judge," Clayton sneered. He nodded to his deputies. "Cuff her." One of them grabbed my arm and twisted it behind my back hard enough to make my shoulder pop. I cried out. The pain was blinding. Holbrook moved to intervene, his hand going to his jacket, but Clayton stepped right up to him, chest to chest. "Careful, Agent," Clayton said, his voice low and dangerous. "This is a state crime. Exigent circumstances. Unless you want to obstruct a felony arrest on record, you'll step aside. You can interview her after we process her at the county jail." Holbrook hesitated. I could see him thinking. He knew the law. He knew that technically, a local felony warrant could pull me out if they claimed I was a flight risk. And Clayton knew it too. He was using the system against us. The handcuffs bit into my wrists. The click sounded like a gunshot. "I didn't steal anything," I said, looking at Holbrook. "Please don't let him take me. You said I was safe." Holbrook's face was tight with fury, but he didn't draw his weapon. He couldn't start a shootout with local cops in a federal building over a property crime warrant. Clayton had played this perfectly. He grabbed my arm, his grip bruising. Then he leaned in close, his breath hot against my ear, and whispered so only I could hear. "I told you never to dig. I told you to leave it alone. Now you're going to die in a holding cell, Lucy. You'll hang yourself with a bedsheet before your rich parents even touch the tarmac." My blood turned to ice. He wasn't taking me to jail to book me. He was taking me to jail to kill me. "Move," he shouted, jerking me toward the door. The hallway stretched out in front of me. The fluorescent lights blurred overhead as the deputies half-dragged, half-marched me toward the elevators. Clayton's hand was a vice on my arm, his fingers digging into muscle and bone. I knew that grip. It wasn't the first time he'd marched me out a door. Suddenly I was 18 again, standing on the porch with a garbage bag full of my clothes. It was raining. I was shivering, not from cold but from the terrifying realization that I had nowhere to go. Inside the house, through the window, I could see them eating dinner. Clayton and Madison, his real daughter. They were cutting into thick steaks. The chandelier glinted off crystal glasses. I'd just eaten a cold sandwich made from the end of the bread loaf because Clayton said steak was for people who contributed. I remembered knocking on the glass, begging to come back in just for the night. Clayton had opened the door, looming over me just like he was looming over me now. "You should be on your knees thanking me," he'd said, his voice dripping with poison. "I kept a roof over your head for 10 years. I fed you. I clothed you. And you weren't even my blood. Do you know what a burden you were, Lucy? Do you know how expensive it is to keep a mistake?" And I had believed him. God help me, I had believed him. I'd fallen to my knees on that wet concrete and thanked him for the scraps. I'd spent the next 14 years carrying the weight of that debt, believing I was unworthy, believing I owed the world an apology just for existing. I'd worked 3 jobs at once, slept in my car between shifts, ate ramen for weeks just to make rent. And through it all, I'd been grateful. Grateful that he'd given me anything at all. But that was the trap. The realization hit me harder than the handcuffs. It wasn't charity. It was camouflage. He hadn't been raising a stepdaughter. He'd been hiding a witness. Every time he made me feel small, every time he told me I was lucky he didn't throw me in the street, he was grooming me. Training me to be grateful for my own prison. He needed me broken so I wouldn't ask questions. He needed me desperate so I wouldn't look at my own birth certificate. He wasn't my savior. He was my warden. The fear that had been choking me since I walked into this building evaporated. It didn't fade. It burned away in a flash of pure, clarifying rage. He thought he was dragging a scared little girl to jail. He thought he was handling Lucy, the burden. But Lucy didn't exist anymore. I dug my heels into the floor. I stopped fighting the deputy's grip and went completely limp, dropping my entire body weight. It's a trick you learn when you're moving heavy furniture alone. Dead weight is impossible to move gracefully. The sudden drop caught them off guard. The deputy on my left stumbled, his grip slipping. We jerked to a halt 10 feet from the elevator. "Get up," Clayton snarled, yanking my arm. "Stop making a scene." I didn't get up. I planted my feet and slowly straightened my spine, pulling against the handcuffs until the chain was taut. Then I turned my head and looked directly into Clayton's eyes. For the first time in my life, I didn't flinch. I didn't look down. I looked right at the man who had stolen my life, and I let him see exactly what he'd created. The victim was gone. The witness was awake. And she was about to burn his world to the ground. Check the timestamp. My scream tore through the lobby, echoing off the marble walls like a gunshot. It wasn't a plea for help. It was an order. The deputies hesitated, looking down at me confused. For a split second, that confusion gave me the opening I needed. I locked eyes with Holbrook, who was running toward us, his hand reaching for the radio on his shoulder. "The warrant!" I yelled, my voice cracking but loud. "Check the time he signed it." Clayton kicked my leg hard. "Shut her up. Get her in the elevator." But it was too late. Holbrook didn't slow down. He didn't ask questions. He threw his body weight against the elevator doors just as they were sliding shut, forcing them back open with a screech of metal. 2 Federal Protective Service officers appeared from the security checkpoint, hands on their weapons, blocking Clayton's path. "Hold it," Holbrook barked. His voice wasn't calm anymore. It was the voice of a man who commanded federal task forces. "Nobody moves." "This is obstruction of justice," Clayton roared, sweat beading on his forehead. "I am a sheriff executing a lawful arrest." "Let me see the warrant," Holbrook demanded, holding out his hand. Clayton clutched the paper to his chest for a second. A poker player hiding a bad hand. Then, realizing he had 3 federal guns pointed in his direction, he shoved the crumpled paper at Holbrook. "Read it and weep, agent. Grand larceny, signed by Judge Prescott this morning." Holbrook snapped the paper open. He scanned it once, then looked up at the digital clock above the security desk. Then he looked at the security monitors behind the guard station. His expression didn't change, but I saw something shift in his eyes. He'd found it. "You're sloppy, Clayton," Holbrook said, his voice dropping to a terrifying calm. He turned the paper around so the deputies could see it. This warrant was signed at 8 a.m. sharp. He pointed at the security monitor on the wall. But my building's cameras logged Lucy entering through the north metal detectors at 7:45. The lobby went dead silent. "She's been in federal custody since she walked in," Holbrook said, stepping closer to Clayton. "Unless she can teleport, she couldn't have stolen jewelry from your house at 8 if she was standing in my lobby 15 minutes earlier." The deputies holding me loosened their grip. They looked at each other, then at Clayton. They realized they weren't executing an arrest. They were accomplices to a kidnapping in progress. "It's a typo!" Clayton shouted, spit flying from his mouth. "The clerk made a mistake on the time. She stole it last night." "The warrant says this morning," Holbrook countered. "And if you lied on a sworn affidavit to get this signed, that's perjury. If you're trying to drag a federal witness out of here on falsified charges, that's kidnapping." Holbrook signaled to his guards. "Release her. Now." The deputies let go of my arms like I was on fire. I scrambled backward across the floor, putting distance between myself and the man who'd stolen my life. Clayton stood alone in the center of the circle. His face was purple with rage. He looked at his deputies backing away. He looked at Holbrook staring him down with cold contempt. He looked at me, standing up, rubbing my bruised wrists, no longer the scared girl he could bully into silence. He realized he couldn't talk his way out of this. His authority didn't work here. That's when he broke. I'm not leaving without her. Clayton screamed. His hand flew to his belt. He didn't draw his service pistol. He knew that would get him killed instantly. Instead, he ripped his taser from its holster, the yellow plastic gleaming under the lobby lights. He leveled it at Holbrook. "Back off," he yelled, his voice cracking with desperation. "I am taking custody of this suspect. Anyone who interferes gets dropped." He was insane. He was holding a federal agent at gunpoint in a federal building. But I looked at his eyes, wide and frantic, and I realized he wasn't trying to arrest me anymore. He knew it was over. He was just trying to survive the next 5 minutes. The guards reacted instantly. 3 Glocks snapped up, trained on Clayton's chest. "Drop the weapon," Holbrook ordered. "Now." For a moment, it looked like Clayton might force them to shoot him out of spite. Then the madness drained from his eyes. He wasn't a martyr, just a bully. He tossed the taser to the marble floor and raised his hands. "Fine," he sneered. "Let's do this properly." He reached into his jacket. The guards tensed, but he pulled out a document, snapping it open with practiced flair. "You caught me," Clayton said lightly. "The warrant was fake. I knew about the kidnapping. I helped cover it up." He looked straight at me, smiling. "I kept you. I hid you. I stole your life." Holbrook stepped forward with cuffs. "That's a confession. You're under arrest." Clayton laughed. Actually laughed. "No, I'm not. Check the calendar. The kidnapping happened in 1991. The statute of limitations expired in 2011. The room went silent. Holbrook didn't move. Clayton seized the moment. "You can't touch me for kidnapping or fraud. I walk. And legally, you're still incompetent. I control your assets." He turned for the door. "I'm suing all of you." "You're right about the statute," Holbrook said calmly, stopping him mid-step. Clayton frowned. "Then we're done here. But you forgot one rule." "Which is?" Holbrook lifted a thick file from his briefcase. "The constructive trust doctrine. You don't own property obtained through fraud. You hold it for the victim." The file hit the bench with a thud. "We traced the ransom payments, the foster stipends, the investments you made with money meant for her care. Every dollar the Westbrook family sent over the years, thinking their daughter was being taken care of. You took it all." "That's my money," Clayton snapped. "No," I said, stepping forward. My voice didn't shake this time. "You just managed it for me." Holbrook's voice was ice cold. "Civil fraud doesn't expire when the victim was a minor. Your assets are frozen. Your house is seized. Your accounts belong to the victim." He pointed at me. "It all belongs to Morgan." Clayton recoiled, and for the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes. Not of prison, but of losing everything. "But I'm the sheriff." "You laundered money and filed false tax returns," Holbrook cut in. "Those clocks are still running. And I'm guessing when we dig deeper, we'll find a lot more." The guards moved this time. Clayton screamed as the cuffs snapped shut. I watched them take him away. The man who'd made me feel like nothing for 32 years was being dragged out in handcuffs, and I felt nothing but relief. "You're nothing," I whispered as they pushed him past me. He looked at me one last time, and the hatred in his eyes told me everything I needed to know. He'd never seen me as a person. Just a paycheck he could control. The lobby fell quiet. Holbrook slid a paper toward me. "Asset transfer authorization." My hand hovered over it for a second. This was everything Clayton had built with my family's money. The house. The investments. All of it. "Sell it," I said, signing without hesitation. "Every last piece. I don't want anything that has his name on it. Just make sure he never goes back to that house." Holbrook nodded. "Consider it done." I had nothing left. No apartment, no job, $12 in my pocket. But I was free. The lobby doors opened, and sunlight flooded in. 2 figures rushed through, a man and a woman, both in their 60s. The woman had tears streaming down her face before she even reached me. I didn't need proof. I didn't need a DNA test. I felt it in my bones. "Morgan," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Oh my God, Morgan. I'm here. We're here." She reached for me, and I didn't pull away. For the first time in my life, I let someone hold me without wondering when they'd let go. My father, my real father, wrapped his arms around both of us. He was crying too, these big silent sobs that shook his whole body. "We never stopped looking," he said. "We never gave up. Not once." They held me like they'd never let go, and I realized this was what love was supposed to feel like. Not conditional. Not earned. Just there. For the first time in 32 years, I was home. Thanks for listening, and if you liked this story, share it with others, and don't forget to comment and subscribe for more stories about second chances, redemption, and finding out who you really are. Sometimes the life you're meant to live is waiting on the other side of the truth.